Welcome to Galaxy Brains.
An infinite amount of cash.
I'm your host, Alex Thorne.
The U.S. banking system is sound and resilient.
Bitcoin made a new all-time high.
If you're not long, you're short.
Satoshi's going to come on there, laugh hysterically, go quiet, all Bitcoin's going to be erased.
Bitcoin's the best crypto asset.
Bitcoin is going to zero.
Welcome back to Galaxy Brains, the next issue of our Nashville tapes. I have a great interview with co-founder and chief strategy officer at Lightspark, Christian Catalini, formerly of Facebook, worked on the Libra project there, and of MIT. It's a fascinating conversation. Learn why Christian and Lightspark and David Marcus are so bullish on Bitcoin and the Lightning Network. Let's get right to the interview. Before we get to the show, I need to remind you, please refer to the link to the disclaimer in the podcast notes and note that none of the information in this podcast constitutes investment advice or an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy Digital or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. Welcome, Christian Catalini, Chief Strategy Officer, co-founder of Lightspark. Thanks for coming on Galaxy Brains. Great to have you.
Alex, it's great to be here today.
I've been a fan of your work. I don't know if you're from Boston, but you certainly were in Boston. You used to be at MIT. I was at Fidelity, and I followed your work there a bit. And we're going to get into some of that. But at first, I'd love to just ask you, what is Lightspark? What are you guys building? And why are you at the Bitcoin conference?
Well, Lightspark was born out of a desire to complete, something that we had set ourselves to achieve back in the day with Libra, which is, can we bootstrap and support a truly open protocol for money? Many lessons after, we concluded that there's only one network that can be achieved on, and that network and asset is Bitcoin. So when we founded Lightspark, we set ourselves to really scale Bitcoin as the global settlement layer for any money movement, really, globally. And that was not an easy technical challenge, but 2 years into that journey and many more partners and customers on the network, I can say that it is true that you can use Lightning today to move value 24/7 with final settlement between many, many countries of the world and more to come.
Yeah, it is the open protocol for money, probably the most iconic and most open. You mentioned Libra. I didn't, in your introduction, also say that you worked on Libra at Facebook. This was the, is it fair to call it a stablecoin project? What was Libra? Maybe, how would you describe what Libra was? You said open protocol for money, but how else would you describe it?
Yeah, when we started, the idea was like, can we really connect billions of people to a network that can allow them to move value to their family and friends, starting with remittances and cross-border money movement, as seamlessly and low cost as possible? Of course, Facebook would have been a wonderful platform for that, given its reach. But that project that started, with a basket and then evolved into a family of stablecoins, encountered a lot of regulatory opposition, also because everybody could see at that scale how transformative crypto can be in terms of like really displacing and rewiring a lot of our payments and financial services infrastructure.
Yeah, were they Mark Zuckerberg, I'm going to say it, he was hauled before Congress. People in Congress were very concerned. What was that concern driven by? Was it that, wait a second, like this is a tech company, but it looks kind of like financial services now, like you're not allowed to do this? Was it fear over the dollar itself? Were they worried about dollar dominance? Like, what was your take on the reaction to Libra?
There were a number of partners in that journey, so it wasn't just Facebook. There were a number of companies and nonprofits and academic institutions involved. I think regulators saw the white paper and they saw kind of the project at scale. Of course, we were just proposing a set of ideas. But if you think about the world we were describing at scale, it's one where, of course, from banking institutions to regular financial institutions, services could get a lot cheaper. And that is a word that I think others have struggled to make real. If you roll all the clock back to the early days of PayPal or even X.com in the first, Elon Musk incarnation, whoever has tried to really reform and restructure payments and financial services has really struggled. It's an industry that I would say has been left almost unscathed by the internet relative to other sectors that have evolved and changed a lot more. I think that's about to change. But again, it's measured in decades, not years.
Yeah, it is. The payments industry is it a moat? Is it a regulatory moat? Is it that we rely on the card networks and they're not really open? And why is it so hard to improve payments? Even when I think about like Apple Pay and stuff, it's still basically just a wrapper on the credit cards. It's not fundamentally different. Why has it been so difficult?
If you think about what industries have been kind of held back, by the internet, it's all heavily regulated industries, whether it's finance or healthcare. Those are sectors that, for good reasons, right, have additional rules and regulations, and the participants are heavily scrutinized and monitored. So when you're trying to innovate, you have this really difficult job of almost running two infrastructures in parallel for a long time. So I think the reason why we haven't seen as much change in payments, and again, I strongly believe that's about to change, is because you need to kind of do things much more carefully than in other sectors. When people's values at stake, when you're trying to make sure that transactions are not illicit or money laundering or any other sort of illicit activity, there's additional requirements, and so that's a lot of hard work. And when you think about it, crypto and blockchain has been wonderful at solving problems in the digital space, but at the intersection between the digital and the real world, you have that last mile problem. How do I know that someone I'm interacting with is really who they say they are, and all of that? So from KYC to everything else, those are things that we need to reinvent for Bitcoin and crypto in general to really reach their potential.
So then Lightspark, you guys build on Lightning, the Lightning network. What kind of services do you actually offer?
Yeah, so we started our journey with trying to really make Bitcoin money movement as seamless, frictionless, and enterprise-grade as possible. When you look at Lightning, it's a technology that's been around for a while. It's been more than 7 years since the original white paper. And for a while, really nothing happened. And when we started looking at it, it was clear to us that the concepts behind Lightning had a lot of potential. So think about the privacy of transactions. If I'm trying to do business, I definitely don't want my payments to come in and be visible to a competitor. It's also a network that can scale gracefully and support millions of transactions. At the same time, nobody had really made Lightning easy to use. So it was like people in their garage running a node, doing all sort of complex things like rebalancing liquidity. And if you want Lightning to succeed, you need to abstract away all of that. You need to make it so seamless, like building against the Stripe API. So we did that. And then we also realized that if we want Bitcoin and Lightning to really win, we need to make Lightning extremely capital efficient. That's where, we're kind of a split company with crypto and payment rails, but also AI and ML. So a big part of how we deliver low cost, real time, and highly reliable Lightning is through Lightspark Predict, which is kind of our service that really optimizes all your connections, all your money movements to make it really efficient.
Yeah, the topography of this Lightning network is... it's not a network, right? It's a giant web of possibly interlocking payment channels. And I've talked to some people who are really good at Lightning, and you're right, there aren't that many of them. I don't mean there's some good Lightning companies, but like individuals, it's quite difficult. And one of the pieces of true alpha this node operator said was like, he's like, dude, I'm constantly moving my liquidity around to capture more fees. And he's like, I don't think anyone's figured this out. This is like a couple of years ago. So it's an interesting kind of wild west because it's just this interlocking web. Do you guys also, so you help companies run their own Lightning infrastructure, or do you offer hosted Lightning infrastructure for companies, or both? I don't know. Like if I'm a company and I want to accept payment through Lightning, I can come to Lightspark.
So we take an enterprise angle to all of this. And so to us, it's really important that our customers are in control of their keys. So our solutions are non-custodial. At the same time, we brought automation to all of that, right? We actually started, our head of data science, Josh, spent probably the first months of our Lightspark journey optimizing channels, doing a lot of these things manually. But quickly we realized no single human could do that. And so that's when we brought in AI and ML to automate all of that. That gives you an experience that to a customer feels literally like a modern payment network. All of the complexity of Bitcoin is abstracted away. And as we extended, what's interesting is that we also realized that Bitcoin money movement is increasingly important. It's really meaningful. But if we want to onboard not just millions of users, but billions, we need to go to an experience that's going to be much more fiat to fiat. Still with Bitcoin in the picture, right? So Bitcoin being a much better asset than a stable coin for doing money movement, say, between the US and Mexico or the US and Europe or any sort of region.
Why is that? Why do you think it's much better?
People don't think about it that often, but when you look at every digital asset out there, whether it's Tether or USDC, the spreads are typically much, much higher for going from a stable coin to fiat. And until there's a world where people want to hold a deposit token or a stable coin, and I think we're probably 5 to 10 years out from that, Bitcoin is the one asset that is in demand everywhere on the planet. People buy and sell Bitcoin daily because they believe in this new store of value. They believe in the vision and the mission of Bitcoin. And as part of that, it makes it such a natural candidate for anyone that needs to move value 24/7. There's no asset globally that's available to everyone around the clock, instantaneously. Imagine you're in London on a Friday night and you need to move value to New York. Are you going to do that, right? Yeah. You can do it within a single app, but really the money hasn't moved. That's an internal ledger. If you need final settlement between counterparties that don't trust each other, then Bitcoin is there, and it's really the one that you can use with the cheapest cost.
So you guys love that it's an open protocol, right? I was saying that I hadn't thought about the liquidity question, which is the Bitcoin trading spreads, because I was going to ask, why not stablecoins? Why not Ethereum? Why specifically Bitcoin? I mean, is Bitcoin slower than Ethereum, but I guess Lightning isn't. So maybe you guys have figured it all out. It sounds like the liquidity question is very interesting. It's definitely the most liquid digital asset, right?
Right.
And you don't want to go FX to FX. That you do need to do during banking hours, and is quite expensive. Is that the type of use cases you guys are seeing a lot at Lightspark? Is cross-border and remittance type stuff, or is it maybe not remittance, but like cross-border counterparty trading, international businesses? What's the sort of character makeup of your client base?
It's really the starting point, right? So cross-border money movement is still expensive. It's still slow. Most people, have come to experience everything in real time in today's world. And when you're trying to move value, even between your two accounts in different regions or countries, it's extremely slow and cumbersome. But when you think about these universal money addresses that you can have on the Lightning Network, not only they're user-friendly, right? So $Alex@galaxy.com could be how I send and receive money from you. Mm-hmm. Same with a business. When you add FX, so that now we can speak dollars, we can speak euros, we can speak stables, it doesn't really matter. And you add all the layers for compliance, travel rule, everything that's needed for regulated institutions to participate. Suddenly you have a mix where moving value between different applications, between AI agents, between marketplaces, it's seamless, right? Mm-hmm. So banking is so distant from those applications today. If you think about, a ride-sharing app or a creator economy app, all those payouts, all those money movement flows are so slow and clunky. Just think about a paywall, right? In the future, I imagine you'll have an AI agent that's the Alex Reader that goes out every morning, sources the best clips from the podcast, the best articles to read, buys them from a publisher, maybe micropaying over Lightning, tiny sats for each interaction, brings that all back to you as a digital package, and you just get to experience it seamlessly.
That would be great. That would be great. Like a curated, my own magazine every morning.
Correct.
I would love that.
Same for travel, same for finance, like all these applications where we do make decisions today. If you think about it, AI is all about reducing the number of decisions that we need to make by swapping decisions with predictions. If I can predict exactly what you should read tomorrow because I know your preferences, I know what's interesting in the world, then you don't need to even think about, okay, I'm loading this page, I'm looking at this site. It all comes to you.
Do you think, is there, stay on this topic, it's very interesting. Like, does that create problems in the future for human agency? Or we end up, Fidelity at FCAT, Fidelity Center for Applied Technology, they did a series of videos in like 2016 or 17 that I recall, predicting the future. There was a really interesting Bitcoin one where an autonomous Uber vehicle was like being paid and paying in Bitcoin. But there was another one about a smart home where it knew when you wanted to wake up, it knew that you liked this song, it knew that you needed to get dressed, it found out from like that you were sick, it gave you the drink that you needed to get healthy. And at some point I was like, are you just being like a pawn now being moved around by a machine without even knowing it? Is that a fear that you have for AI? That's one that I have, as you can tell.
Yeah, I'm extremely optimistic on this. And look, there's going to be side effects from any technology, and it's very hard to predict which ones, right? So if you roll back the clock on the internet, you probably wouldn't have guessed what things got us in trouble with the internet, right?
True.
But when it comes to AI and decision making, if you roll back, a couple hundred years, right? Imagine we're all farmers. Think about how many more decisions we had to make on a day-to-day basis. And then we pass those decisions over to others, right? So you go to the grocery stores, the price of that avocado or banana already incorporates all that information for you. That's where we're going, right? And I think it will feel very natural for people being born in a post-AI agent world that oh, wait, you used to have to worry about this? It's like, why would you waste cycles, deciding what to do in the morning? Right?
I'm thinking about like trying to find a movie showtime. You used to have to use the newspaper. Then I remember when I was growing up, you could call a phone number and it would like read them to you, right? There's a great Seinfeld episode where Kramer's reading them out. Then now it's like, okay, then you go on the internet and like even now it's really not that easy, to be honest. I was thinking about going to a movie a few days ago here in Nashville, and I have to find the specific theater and be like, okay, no, this day, and then I'm looking at the showtimes. Would be so much, and it is. I probably can. I haven't tried to ask ChatGPT yet about like movies in my area, but obvious giant number of steps back. You had to literally go buy a newspaper to find out. Down to soon, just like, hey, Siri, where are the movies in my area?
And that's where, when you start thinking about these new use cases, it's obvious that we need new payment rails because your AI agent will, again, micropay for tiny, tiny fractions of things. And look, people have talked about micropayments forever. And the reality is that from an economics perspective, micropayments make no sense for human beings. Like me deciding, is this article worth 50 cents, right? It's not going to be worth my time. And it's not a model that works also for the publisher, right? Mm-hmm. The publisher would rather sell you a bundle that is a predictable revenue and actually allows them to cover professional stuff and all of that. But once you switch to a world where the machines are going to be our agents, then machines have no cognitive cost when they're paying, and they will want to micropay for things because that's how they think about resources, right? Whether it's electricity, data, or whatnot.
I think that's brilliant. I think you're right. I'd wondered why. I like the idea of not having to have a subscription to every single streaming service or newspaper, and so I always wanted this mic. But you're right. Like I also don't have the mental capacity to decide every single article, do I want to buy it based on headline? You're right. Someone's got to do that for me, something. I wanted to ask, too, micropayments obviously very possible and done regularly in Lightning, incredibly possible. Probably the best micropayments platform ever created. I mean, I can send you a single sat, actually. But are you guys thinking about other scaling technologies for Bitcoin? There's a big movement afoot of building new types of layer 2s, roll-ups, ZK roll-ups and stuff. Is that something you guys look at Lightspark? I
mean, we're definitely, in touch with many of the teams that are experimenting in that space. It's an area of growth. I think, as usual, it's very early days. So there's a number of really compelling ideas. But as we've seen, even with the Lightning white paper, right, those ideas may take 5 years to materialize. I would say something that's quite unique in Bitcoin that it's very different in EVM is that to some extent on Ethereum, you had old rollups and scaling solutions happen. And now everybody is asking the question of like, okay, now that we have this very fragmented ecosystem, how do we bring them back together? How do you move from, this rollup to Base or whatever? In Bitcoin, we have this massive advantage, which is there was already a natural settlement asset for faster Bitcoin transaction, and that is Lightning. And so we're pretty bullish on everything happening on top because Bitcoin Lightning will be the natural way where these different L2, L3s, whatever it is, we want to speak to each other. And so we're building for that future.
That's very interesting. I've heard this from a few of the L2s too, particularly not just the fragmentation of liquidity and users, but also the bridging even between L1. Lightning is by definition, can be a trustless on and off ramp. When you and I open a channel, it's just a two of two transaction we agree on, right? Like we do. There is no bridge, right? And so maybe you think Lightning can be the connectivity that helps serve as the glue for this growing Bitcoin ecosystem?
I think it's already there, right? And so it's going to be natural for people to use it. Of course, you can always bridge on L1, but it's going to be slower. The other interesting angle is that, as this ecosystem really is born, again, it's early days, but when you think about it, liquidity locked in a Lightning channel could be a collateral in DeFi. Yeah. Now, we're not there yet, right? And there's going to be a number of technical steps to ensure that it's done in a proper way. But things that were built in EVM and in other ecosystems, I think will slowly migrate back. And we're seeing a lot of that. I sometimes feel like we went on a 10-year detour, right? I started with Bitcoin. It's the first asset that I encountered when I started learning about crypto. And now we're looking at Bitcoin with very different lenses. So we were culpable of this too, right? When we set ourselves to build Libra, we wanted a very high-performance blockchain. We built a whole new programming language, Move, on top of it. Right. We wanted it to be state-of-the-art. But when you come out of that, you realize that it's not about the technology. The reason why we're all here in Nashville and in crypto in general is because Satoshi started something that's much deeper than a technology. It started a new governance structure. And that's the thing that's very hard to replicate everywhere else.
Amazing. Yeah. Christian, you're at the Bitcoin. We were at the Bitcoin conference, Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville. What is one thing that has struck you about this conference so far?
I think we're still early, right? So when I walk the hallways, I still see a lot of the traditional Bitcoin infrastructure, everything that was built around the store of value, the miners, the other ecosystem participants, trading. I look forward to coming back in a few years and seeing the applications. The kind of apps and decentralized protocols and things that will be able to solve end users and businesses' problems. I think we're still so behind. And when I got into Bitcoin back, in 2011 or so, and then the Bitcoin experiment, I really felt like, in the span of a couple of years, this is going to be the financial infrastructure. I was so naive, right? And I hope that things will accelerate, but we all have to do a lot of work for making that happen.
Well, you guys are at Lightspark, certainly on medium exchange and transmission of Bitcoin. I love that you said you're focused on money movement, making the money movement of Bitcoin easier. It's pretty easy to do at a small scale retail level, but I imagine a business operating, wanting to use Bitcoin, still has a bunch of challenges, and it's fascinating what you guys are building. Anything you're looking forward to? It's early for I don't know when exactly we're going to have released this, but it's a little bit early in the conference. Is there anything you're looking forward to specifically this year to see in Nashville?
Look, I'm quite excited about what we're building with UMA, or Universal Money Addresses. You probably have seen the Nubank announcement. We have Coinbase on the stack, Bitso, and many more is coming. It's really beautiful to see entities that have tried to build at scale in crypto for many years converging on the same open protocol. And I think it will happen slowly and then suddenly, where once you can reach 500 million or 1 billion users with an UMA address or businesses, the reality of how we think about money and payments will be drastically different. So I'm quite excited to build that.
Christian Catalini, co-founder, chief strategy officer at Lightspark, formerly Facebook and MIT, still an MIT guy. Christian, thank you so much for coming on Galaxy Brains.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for listening to Galaxy Brains, the weekly podcast from Galaxy Research. If you enjoy the show, please like, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To follow Galaxy Research, sign up for our weekly newsletter at gdr.email, read our content at galaxy.com/research, and follow us on Twitter at GLXY Research. See you next week.